Good morning and welcome to our walkthrough for our supply liaisons from the perspective of the supplier. My name is Douglas Bailey. I am the tax and supplier manager here at the university. Joining me on today will be two of our analysts, Jamie Snelling and Jonna Duncan. I'll kind of get things kicked off here. This, like I said, this is going to be a more of a walkthrough from the perspective of the supplier. So I'll kick things off. Um, just kind of high level overview of some resources and things that we have out on the controls office website. And then I'll kick it over to Jonna to get into some of the details of walking through the portal. She'll then kick it back to me to do a walkthrough of requesting a user ID. And then finally, I'll kick it back to her for a walkthrough of the change request process. Before we get into any of the walkthrough, what I'd like to do is point your attention to some of the resources that we have on the Controller's Office website. So if you navigate to the Controller's Office website, you'll see over in this left-hand side here, Supplier and Tax Management. If you click on Supplier Management, we've got some Supplier Liaison FAQs. So here's where under Supplier Onboarding, this is where we'll have all of our job aids, both video and written job aids. So these are resources that you could direct your suppliers to. But the other thing that I want to draw your attention to is the Supplier Liaison FAQs. We've got some really good job aids out here for you as our supplier liaisons. One of the ones that we really like is the job aid that helps you as the liaison determine if your supplier is in the system, and then which template or invitation letter you'll need to send to your supplier. So that's going to be this first job aid. When and how do I direct suppliers to the supplier self-service portal? One thing that we notice from time to time, sometimes our liaisons, they've got a supplier that's already in the system, and they really just need to request a user ID. But sometimes we see where supplier liaisons will actually send them a new invitation letter or invitation letter to request to become a new supplier. So like I said, if you navigate to the Controls Office website, from there navigate to Supplier Management and then Supplier Liaison FAQs, and then you click on this Supplier Liaison job aid. This one-page job aid will from start until it's time to determine which template letter to send. This one-page job aid will help you do that. So it'll prevent you from sending an incorrect template letter. So once you determine which template letter you'll need, let's say you determine that you need to send a new registration template letter. You've now sent that template letter. Your supplier has the link. They're in the portal. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jonna to walk you through that process from the perspective of the supplier liaison, from the perspective of the supplier.
Welcome everybody, and just a good thing to do when you're sending those welcome letters is to send those job aids that Douglas just showed along with it, because that's a PDF version of exactly what we're going to go through. So that way they'll have a walkthrough right there in front of them to help as they go through the process if needed. Okay, and then another note, these videos that we're showing today are also on that page. So if you've got a supplier who really needs to see something, you can send these videos to them to help them to register. Okay. Okay, so this is the page they're gonna get to when you send that link, and they will click user registration, and they will go right up here to domestic supplier request and register now. And then you'll see here there are links to the job aids at the top, right there with the blue. And then to start, they will select either business or individual. And I think today we're going to show the individual process, so they will click next. In tax ID field, that's where they're going to enter their social, and this is a numbers only field. And then their name. The name continued field is just for overflow. So if their name field doesn't fill up, then they don't need to continue down there. Profile questions. This is where they are going to enter that supplier liaison email. Okay, and this is only for new registrations. User ID requests do not put in a department email. Okay, and then to answer the payment questions, they're going to click the magnifying glass and select the best answer. And if you'll see the choices here, you can tell them what you need them to select. And then they'll answer whether or not they're a USC student. And if so, what services they'll be providing. 5 is very important. This is where they will attach their W-9. Make sure that they have a signed W-9. That's our biggest pushback, is that people will upload it without a signature. Payment options, this is where they can choose to sign up for ACH or not. Okay, there are some additional reporting elements, and that is not required, so they can either answer or skip. And then select next to continue. Okay, this is going to be their primary address, and this needs to match what is on their tax ID, what is on their W-9. If they have a different remit or order address, you'll see below they can actually add those here as well. But this primary address needs to match their W-9 address. Okay, then they will select next to continue. A contact, they will need to add a contact here. The most important thing to note here is that under contact type, if they selected yes, that they would like ACH, that contact type has to be ACH. Instead of, there's a lot of choices, but if they want ACH, it has to be ACH listed there. Okay, and also this email ID that they're listing right here, that will be connected to their login information. So anything that's emailed from the university will go to that email. Okay, they will also enter their own password here, and the requirements for this are an uppercase letter, lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. Okay, and then they'll select OK to continue. All right, and you see that the user ID is listed there on the screen. All of our user IDs start with SCS, and that will be emailed to them. And then we'll select next to continue. All right, payment information. This is where they will enter their ACH information. If they selected no in the beginning to ACH, all this screen will be grayed out. Okay, so here the email address is where their remittance advice will go. And then they will enter their bank name, routing number, and bank account number. And then on the other side, they will select what type of account. If they have any issues with this, there is a button right there that says Bank Info Instructions, and that shows them exactly where on a check they could find all of this information. Right there, there you go, for the instructions. Okay, and then they'll scroll down and click next. All right, this is just saying you give the university the authorization to submit ACH payments into your account. So they'll select OK. Yes, the user IDs all begin with SCS. Here, you just need to make sure that their email address matches. They will select the box to accept the terms and conditions and then submit. Yes, ACH is not required. They select whether or not they want that on the very first page. Okay, and this one's done, they've submitted. And then this registration will go to the department for approval. And then once y'all approve, it will come to us. And then we'll go through all their information and make sure everything matches their W-9 and is accurate.
Okay, thank you, John. I just want to pause there for a second. I did see one question. I think Mary had a question about small business. That so that is probably a better question for purchasing. But the one thing that I will say, Mary, based on what I understand, if it is a business that qualifies for that, they will know. So based on what I understand, that's nothing that you'll need to tell them. They will know that, and they will want to disclose that. So, but purchasing could definitely, like Jamie said, purchasing could definitely explain that in a little more detail for you. Did we did we have any other questions, Joanne?
No, I think we got all the questions along the way. Oh, here's one question. Is it possible for the department to get an email if an approval is put on hold due to the supplier needing to fix something or upload a corrected W-9 that we may need to follow up with?
So if there's any kind of back and forth between the supplier team and the supplier to get any information, we don't bog the liaisons down with that because that's really our responsibility to get all the pertinent information and accurate information. But what you as the liaison will get is an email once all that back and forth is done and we've worked everything out. Once that registration is finally approved, then you will get that notification. But we don't want to bog down the liaisons with all the back and forth emails. The one thing that I will say though, if you know that you've approved a registration and you haven't gotten that email for quite a few days, our turnaround time here in the controls office is 24 hours. Most of our suppliers we can get approved same day. But if you know that you've approved a supplier and it's been a couple days and you haven't seen that email that the supplier has been approved, most times it's going to be because we're waiting on some information. We're waiting on a completed W-9. We're waiting on something from the supplier. The other thing that's important to note, you may get your supplier that reaches out and says, "Hey, I've submitted my information, but nothing. I haven't gotten any feedback that it's been approved." Anytime we push back on those registrations, the supplier does receive that email. You, as the liaison, you won't receive it, but the supplier will receive that email, letting them know exactly what it is that we need them to do. So the supplier will receive that information. They will just need to go in and uh, figure out what it is that we're requesting, resubmit that so that we can approve it, and everybody can get their final approval email.
Okay, we do have another question from Allie. I have a supplier in the system that is a professional organization. The treasurer that originally input the supplier info has changed to a different person at a different university. How can the new treasurer get access to update the mailing address, etc.?
So that is a supplier that is currently in the system. So there's two template letters that we spoke of earlier. One is for new suppliers that are not in the system. That second invitation letter is the user ID request template letter. So what that new treasurer will need to do, you need to send that new user ID invitation letter to the treasurer so that he can request or she can request a user ID. Once they get their login and password information, At that point, they can then log in and update the address information. So what'll need to happen is you'll just need to send them that, and I'll show you what that letter looks like if you haven't seen it yet. I've got it pulled up here. This is the letter that you need to send to them, and this is the most recent letter as of March 10th. This is the invitation letter that you need to send to the treasurer. Have them request a user ID, and once they get their login credentials, they can go in and update their address.
Just a note with that, you'll need to send them their supplier ID, and the other part of that is their tax ID, but they have to have that information. That's part of our checks and balances to make sure that they are supposed to be privy to that information.
Correct. Any other questions before we move on to registering as an international?
I think that's all the questions we have right now, Douglas.
Hey, very good. Very good questions, guys.
All right, so registering as an international supplier is quicker because international suppliers cannot sign up for ACH. So it's a little shorter of a process. They will begin the same way by selecting user registration, and they will go down to the second choice, which is international supplier request. And then they will select whether they are a business or an individual. Okay, and here there's some options. Some foreign internationals have a U.S. tax ID, and if they have that, they will enter it. If not, they will have a foreign tax ID. And if they're in a country where they do not have a foreign tax ID, they can enter any number that they have that is an identifying number for them. It could be a passport number or whatever. I know some universities have different types of numbers that are not the same as a tax ID, but any number that they will remember to use in that field is fine. Okay, and then for the name, they'll enter their name. Okay, and then profile questions, again, they will begin with their supplier liaison email address. And then the magnifying glass will show you the items that they can select from for payment options. Okay, this one is very important. Where will the services be provided? Will it be on U.S. soil or not? This determines what form they need to upload in Section 4. When we get back to it, you'll see in Section 4, it tells them, based on where the service is happening, what form is required. Right there. If offering a service that will be performed on U.S. soil, please attach Form 3288 as opposed to a W-8 bin. Okay. And then again, there are additional reporting elements that are not required, but they can fill that in if they would like to. And they'll select next to continue. Here, they're going to start by clicking the magnifying glass and selecting their country. And again, their primary address will be their home address. But if they have a U.S. address, for example, students and such, they will select remit to address down at the bottom under other addresses and can add their U.S. address. And then we'll click next to go on to the contact tab. They'll add a contact. And this is the same as for domestic suppliers. They'll just enter their information and then they'll create their own password. And again, the password requirements are an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. Okay, again, you see that user ID is displayed, and that will also be emailed to them. They'll select next. They will make sure that email is correct. That is where their communications will be sent from the university. They will select to agree to the terms, and then they will submit. And again, this is when it will come to the supplier liaison for approval. And that's all there is to it.
Right. We're going to pause here briefly to see if we have any questions we can answer about the international registration.
I don't have any questions right now. Oh, here's one. Where can I find on the website the new updated supplier invite letter that you said was updated as of March?
Okay, so Jenny, that's actually not housed on the controller's office website, because the portal is invitation only. We don't store that publicly. But what we can do after this call is blast that out to you guys, so that you can have it. I believe the last time we sent it out was maybe in March, when we did a webinar. But we can definitely get that out to you on today.
That's all I have right now.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to walk through how to request a user ID. I think it was Allie that had a question about the treasurer that changed roles. So once that user ID request letter is sent to the new treasurer, they'll have the link in that letter. Once they click on that link, this is the screen that it'll bring the new treasurer to. And we'll I guess it's perfect. We've got this example, so we'll just say, Madam Treasurer. So Madam Treasurer has the link, and she's now in the portal, and she needs to request a user ID because she needs to the update the company's address. So what Madam Treasurer will want to do is click on user registration. Assuming that Madam Treasurer works for a US company, she'll want to click on register now under the user ID request domestic. If she works for an international company, she'll want to select either user ID international A or B, depending on if she has a US tax ID or not. But for this example, we'll assume that Madam Treasurer is domestic supplier. So she'll want to click on register now. As John has stated, when you send that user ID request letter, you also need to send their supplier ID. That's one part of the equation. The other half of the equation they should have, which is their tax ID number. So to request their user ID, they'll want to input that supplier ID number that you provide them with. If they key that number in incorrectly, they'll get a. I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So they'll want to key in their supplier ID. Once their supplier ID is entered, then they'll want to key in their tax ID number. If they key this tax ID and D number in incorrectly, the system will tell them it's an incorrect tax ID. They'll need to correct it. It's just off by one digit, so I'm just going to change that, and now it's validated. Once that's validated, Madam Treasurer will create her password, same password credentials that John spoke of earlier. And then enter first and last name. And email ID. Once that's entered, they'll want to accept the terms of agreement and submit. Once they submit, they will receive an email with their user ID, which is the SCS number that you see here. And they should already have their password from when they created it here. And that's all they'll need to log in and update that address. So next, what John is going to do, she's going to walk you through how Madam Treasurer would log into the system to update that address information. Before we do that, though, do we have any questions?
So we do have a question from Abby asking if the letters, the Word docs for the registering as a supplier and requesting user ID can be uploaded to the finance intranet since only employees can access that. Douglas, I'm not sure how your team would want to handle that, but I have reached out to see if that's a possibility, and we can kind of take that offline and you guys can make decisions about that based on the information we received back from Richard.
Okay, yeah, definitely.
Good question, Abby.
Yeah, very good question.
And that's all we have right now.
Okay, so I'll turn it back over to Jonna to show us a walkthrough of submitting a change request.
Okay, great. So this time they've already got their sign-in credentials, right? So this time they will go to sign in. Once the video catches up to me. There we go. They will enter that SCS user ID and their password they just created. Okay, and then this time they will click Manage Profile. Okay, we are in a domestic supplier, so domestic change request is already selected. So they will select Next. Here they just need to make sure that everything looks right in the supplier name. They'll select profile questions, and here they're just telling us what's changed so we know what to look for. Okay, if their primary address has changed, they will need to upload a new W-9. For this one, we are adding an address and adding ACH, so you'll see what that looks like. Okay, you can see they've got a primary address listed, and we are going to add a remit. So they're going to click Add New Address, and up there in that description, they're going to change that to remit. And then fill in that information. Okay, once they have it filled in, they'll select OK. And then just a note right here, Doug, if you want to pause, if they needed to instead have updated that primary address on that first line, they will just click that pencil on where it says edit right there. And that's how they would change that primary address. So what we did was adding, but if they wanted to edit, that's what they would do. Okay. And then we'll click next. Here is where they can add a new contact if need be, or again, they can edit that one that's already there. So for your new treasurer, that's where they could change that information. Also worth noting, Doug, if you'll pause, If they are going to do a change request and add ACH, then that contact has to have ACH marked. So sometimes people get to the end and it'll say you have to have an ACH contact. Well, that's what it means. Right there where that field is, it has to say ACH. Okay. Next. Okay. One thing that cannot be edited is ACH information. You can only add new. So this will show you what's there, but then to change your bank account, they have to add a new bank account. You can't edit what's already there. So this is exactly the same as in registration. So they've got the bank name, the routing number, bank account number, and then account type. And again, the information for finding these numbers on your check is in bank info instructions. Right there. So they will enter all that and select OK. And then you'll see that new account is listed second and it has the check for default. So that's how you know that it's been updated. So they will select OK. Again, this is letting the university have access to that account. And that's all there is to it. And they'll select next to continue. Here, they're just making sure that that email address is correct for communications from the university. Here, they can enter in a brief description of what they've changed or added. This isn't required, but it is helpful. And they will check the box that they reviewed their changes and then submit. And a reminder that change requests do not go to the supplier liaisons for approval. They just come to us. So if you are looking for a new address, you will use that review supplier page and you'll see when a new address has been added.
All right, thanks, Jonna. I just wanted to touch on one thing. If you have a supplier that's updating ACH information, so I stated earlier, our turnaround time is normally 24 hours. Most things we get approved same day unless we have to push it back and we're just waiting on the supplier to resubmit their change. But for ACH, any suppliers that's updating ACH information, that we don't approve that automatically. We have to do an independent verification where we basically cold call the supplier to try to verify the ACH information that's been provided through that change request. That can take a day, that can take a few days. It just all depends on how responsive the supplier is. So if they're trying to update or change ACH information, that is an additional step that we'll have to do. We'll still approve the supplier. We just won't approve that ACH. They'll continue to receive a check until we're able to verify that information. Any questions?
We have Tiffany's asking, may we recommend or suggest that when adding addresses, if attention Jane Doe has to be used, that it be added to the last line versus the first line? And Jamie saying, yes, you can definitely recommend that.
Yeah, definitely have that not be first, because on the review supplier page, if you're trying to look up somebody by address, only that first line shows up in that search. So if it's the attention, then it's not going to come up. So I would definitely have them not have that as the first line.
Perfect. And then Cheryl's asking, can a contact have more than one contact type?
They cannot, but they can list the same contact twice and then have the different types on each.
Perfect. Douglas, while we're waiting for some more questions to come in, do you want to take them back to the supplier management webpage?
Sure.
Perfect. Thank you.
So just wanted to touch on this just in case because I know we had a few folks that came in after I went over this segment. So pointing your attention to some helpful resources out on the Controller's Office website. If you navigate to the Controller's Office website and under Supplier and Tax Management, if you navigate to Supplier Management, we've got two real sections that we want to draw your attention to. The first section is going to be supplier onboarding. This is where all of our job aids are housed, both written and video. Um, you can definitely feel free when you send your invitation letter to your suppliers. You definitely feel free to also forward to them the applicable job aid. So if we've got Madam Treasurer Madam Treasurer who needs to request access to the system, what you'll want to do, and it's a U.S. supplier, we'll want to send this job aid requesting a new user ID. That'll help Madam Treasurer get her user ID and password. And then once she has that, she'll need to do her change request. And this is the job aid. It's a video job aid and a written job aid. You can send either one or both. That's the job aid that'll help Madam Treasurer actually submit that change request. The second thing we want to draw your attention to on this page are supplier liaison FAQs. A lot of good resources here, but the main one we want to focus on is this supplier liaison job aid. This is a job aid that actually Jonna created. I was very impressed with this job aid. I think it's a super helpful one-page job aid that'll assist you as the now we're talking about the liaison. We're not talking about the supplier at this point, but we're talking about the supplier liaison. This will help you as the supplier liaison determine which invitation letter you'll need to send to your supplier. So if you start at step one, and it'll take you through to figure out if your supplier is in the system, if it's active, if it's inactive, what do you do if it's inactive? Once you go through all those steps, then it'll ultimately tell you which invitation letter to send to your supplier. So like I said, some really good resources out on the Controller's Office website for our supplier liaisons as well. Any other questions?
Well, we have a liaison tip from Shannon. She's saying, I only work with student suppliers, and I found it very helpful to take the domestic supplier job aid and add my own information for students to follow. I also added reminders to sign their W-9s before uploading. This seems to be working as we added close to 50 suppliers in the recent weeks. That's really great, Shannon, that you're taking the initiative to make what we've created work for you. And that's a great tip for your fellow liaisons as well.
Absolutely. We appreciate that, Shannon.
And then Emily is saying, yes, it's super important to know if the supplier exists already. It absolutely is.
Okay, any other questions?
No questions right now.
Okay, well, if we don't have any other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Like I said, we'll get those template letters as of March 10th. We'll blast those out to you on today, so that you can have those, and we'll also include this one-page job aid. Like I said, it's on the Controller's Office website, but we'll include this one-page job aid as well because it's such an important document. It can really cut down on a lot of confusion by not sending the incorrect invitation letter. So we'll send those 3 documents out to you after the call.
And someone's asking if you can mail the PowerPoint to us as well. This is actually not a PowerPoint presentation. We actually went out and just played the videos that are available. So all of those, Tracy, are available on the website that Douglas just shared with you. We do have another question. Would like to remind supplier liaisons to copy the body of the template letter and paste it into the email you're sending out so the links work for the suppliers. Yes, that was always the intention. The intention was to copy and paste that letter into the email, not attach it to the email.
Right. And let me just say this also, John. So I just want to show you where this presentation will be after once we post it. Again, if you navigate to the Controller's Office website, Supplier and Tax Management, here, webinars and trainings, we'll post that here. So this recording will be posted here on the Controller's Office website.
Okay, I think we're good. They're saying thank you so much, and someone said I've needed this week. So good timing, Douglas and team.
Very good. Well, I think we also have Becky on the call. Becky, I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything before we wrap it up.
Um, Sorry, let me unmute myself a minute. Yes, thank you. I wanted you guys to get all the credit because Douglas, you and your team, John and Jane, have done a fabulous job, and Joanne as well. Thank you for your help. But we continue to try to make this. Um, I don't want to say easier. We continue to try to get information and training out to you all because I know it's been less than a year still. It seems like a lot longer than that, but it's less than a year that we rolled this out. But I know everybody's still learning and working with it, and we certainly appreciate it. But yes, Douglas, you and team, congratulations to you. I think this was excellent, and sounds like it was well received also.
Okay, awesome. Well, if we don't have any other questions, then thank you all for attending. Thank you, John and Jamie, for your help, and Joanne, thank you for your assistance on today.
Absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your day.